But anyway, let's get some names. Come and have a seat on the table to chat. Come and get involved with this. We're going to warm this up, but people are going to come in and we'll keep it warm. It's much easier to come into a warm room than a cold room. So look, first of all, get some names. My name's Mikey. What's your name?
My name's John Rose Parker. I'm actually one of the Pendle Roadshow town councillors.
Okay, we'll give you a round of applause for that.
Thank you.
There we go.
I'm Roger.
And
Andrea. I'm Sarah.
I'm Paul.
and who have we got over here?
Andrew.
Andrew, and as I said, I'm Mikey. So I was just saying, hopefully we'll have a few more people come along, but it is going to be easier just to get the conversation going. And one of the things I was talking about in the break is we have been on the road already in Pendle. We've been to Nelson and Colne. The idea of this project is to kind of almost visualise Pendle, but obviously there's different parts of Pendle that have got different perspectives. What are the commonalities? What are the differences? And I think, yeah, maybe Paul, you want to say a bit more about the project as a whole?
Yeah, well, I guess we're supporting the council on getting together information that's going to be the council's next corporate plan, officially, isn't it? That's the thing. And it's the first time, really, that there's been this kind of level of going out to talk to people. So we've been doing lots of pop-up events in the town centres, just finding out what people are thinking, what are their priorities, what they want to do, to then move into a bit more of a conversation during these. So we're doing this all week in various different places around Pendle. So it is just a chance for people to say what is it that it's important to them, what do they want to see happen, you know, and this will all get fed into the bigger document. I don't have that job, but that's yeah.
So what is this document that you wanted to create, Sarah? Grab the mic.
Yeah, sure. So for Pendle Borough Council, it's about the corporate plan, essentially. So it's looking at, for the next 4 years, from 2023 to 27, basically, what are the priorities for Pendle? What's important for Pendle? In what direction do we want to go in? And what are the things that matter to people. So as well as running sessions with our staff, our councillors, as Paul's just said, these sessions going on out and about as well to speak to people and get those different views and to sort of pull that together, and obviously we can feed back as well afterwards.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, and we've got a couple of new faces here. Tell us your name.
It's Rebecca.
And
Andrew.
welcome. Rick, are you there? Are you online? Can we see what happened last week or the week before when we were in Nelson and Colne College? Hey, Rick is there. There we go. So this is an exercise we did with young people. So this is from Nelson and Colne. So one of the questions is, do these issues tally with you? Do they strike a chord, or do they actually are they actually not the same things that are happening here? So, does anyone want to explain some of these things that we've got here? What we can actually do, if you're not happy with any of these things, Rick can remove them. Rick, can you just remove something at random just so we can see you remove something? And maybe we can see if we can see what it is.
Oh,
I didn't see anything. Oh, yeah, wow. I just missed that completely. Okay, so I don't know. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Rick. That's all good stuff. So I don't know if anyone wants to explain, anyone who was there at this last event, what some of these things mean. Is that going to get...
I mean, I can kick it off. I'm Margot as well. So yeah, I remember that we started, each kind of square signified a different kind of part of the house. So the top was the children's room. So we talked about education and multicultural education as well in Pendle. I think overall education, because we did it in Nelson Colne College, I think people were overall really impressed with the school, and they really had great time there. What else? Oh, here we go. Just zooming in.
Yeah. We had the different ethnicities of dolls. That was in the children's playroom.
Yeah.
So we get a sense there's a strong emphasis on recycling. Maybe we can move to another room like the bathroom.
Yeah.
I mean, we just let people project what they wanted to on these things. So one of the concerns was about water. Are we using the water? I mean, one of the things, if we just shift to the left a little bit there, Rick, was about using Pendle's hydroelectric potential as a kind of sustainable. There's a lot. There's young people. There's a lot of questions about sustainability.
But the fresh and kind of clean water got a lot of, you know, positivity because I think people were proud of, you know,
proud of,
of that as a resource. And also it's tasty.
Oh, but then there was also a thing here, and is this a concern in Barlick about the toilets? Because one of the things that was a big complaint by everybody, there's no public toilets really in the whole of Pendle. Hang on.
Just over the road.
Okay.
We do have some, in Barnoldswick
Park.
Yeah.
So that,
Okay,
I mean,
so-
it's probably never enough, but there are two.
Yeah.
There are two local facilities. Yeah.
Okay, so there we go. There's a tick. Look at that. John's glowing with pride. So, you know, maybe we can remove that from the Barlick version of this, Rick. Remove the...
I certainly wouldn't move it because there's always wherever you are. You know, if you're far into Barlick, and toilets are here, that's not a lot of use, is it really? But
Okay, so you think there still could be more?
yeah.
Okay, I mean, I think that's interesting. Okay, well, we'll just have another look around because obviously this is a Nelson and Cohen perspective. There was a concern about the roads there. You can
But
just
you
see
know,
in the
also,
corner.
but also about the toilets, I think that was also linked to accessibility and inclusivity because I think there was a point made about, you know, what if people just have to use the toilet, like, you know, and is it available to them? You know,
Yeah, there was a lot of concern.
but also then it was
about
like a whole conversation about
accessibility.
accessibility. That kind of led on to that.
Yep.
It's not directly related to...
Grab the mic, Rebecca.
It's not related to evacuation, but the children seem to use the toilets as a youth club in this town.
so
It's a
it
place
doubles
where
as a youth club,
there's some real problems at the moment where there's damage to the toilets, kicking down of doors. There's been a lot of repairs recently.
Yeah.
So
I mean, are you saying...
negativity, you know, a bit of a negative point with regards to that.
I mean, in a way, what we did with this exercise, and maybe we'll do the same thing again, is just like, you know, what we actually did is we got the young people of the college to say, we divided them in two, and we said, one half, you're estate agents, and you're bigging up Pendle, and then the other half, we said, you are buyers, so you're trying to knock down the price, and then, you know, we got both the negative and the positive elements of Pendle. And it's interesting how people then switched and then, you know, could easily just knock things and then say the good things as well.
Maybe it's because they're so well maintained that they want to spend time in there.
Yeah, okay. Is it a positive? You see, if you were the estate agent, exactly, you'd say we've got fantastic toilets.
It's a definite plus, but it's a constant battle.
Yeah.
Keeping it in that way, and actually there's three sets of toilets. I mean, there's some up in Leckliffe Park, which is quite a way out of town. So there are three.
Yeah.
Another one wouldn't go amiss, but yeah, they're positive. They are in good condition, but it's a constant
battle of upkeep.
soul destroying, having to sort them out.
But I
every
mean,
morning, isn't it?
I think Rebecca's sort of implying that also because they're so great that it kind of it becomes a hangout, and maybe there needs maybe they're addicted to the to the air freshener. Paul, what are you going to say?
Well, I mean, just in terms of the toilets, I think obviously there was a particular concern in Nelson because there really isn't anywhere in Nelson, and I think it was adding to the frustration that they want somewhere like Nelson to kind of have more on offer for people, whether it's be during the day or in the evening. But if you haven't got sort of the basic facilities, if something was going on or someone can do that, and what you find is in Barnoldswick, you've got those sort of facilities in, and as well as like a town centre that seems to be doing really well, and those two things need to run in tandem. Then also, and just on the young people's point, because you know I've been involved in doing work around Nelson and Colne.
And we've been
young
to
people,
Barlick as well on the young people's, remember?
Yeah, we have, we did, yeah.
That was probably at the beginning of this journey 10 years ago.
There was a lot of discussion, obviously, from young people about kind of what is on offer or not. And it's sometimes young people easily say there's nothing to do, but I think genuinely at this point in time, there isn't anywhere, aren't those places to go that there used to be, because all the youth clubs have literally shut, so they are just finding places that, I don't know whether the toilets have got lights, it's just, or if it's McDonald's, and they were talking about, I mean, there isn't a picture of McDonald's, there's a KFC on there, but McDonald's is coming to Nelson, and it's kind of being seen as a bit of a positive thing, but actually it will bring along a lot of these things, because that will be a draw for young people to hang out, because it's got free Wi-Fi, you know, it's kind of a spot to hang out. which but doesn't always sit well with everybody else that wants to use those facilities, and that's what then has this knock-on effect, really. So there is a genuine issue over, and it sounds like in Barnoldswick there's the same thing starting to happen here in terms of the numbers that are gathering, just because they want to hang out as they always did, and we always did when we were kids, you know.
I think we have to be careful. We have to be careful in Barnoldswick, I think, because if we attract those sorts of big brands, the first thing that's going to happen is that they'll be competitive with the local traders. And the local traders are pretty good. They're independents. They're just about managing. So anytime there's any conversation about what appears to be a really good big brand, we all worry about its impact, negative impact on the rest of the
you personally,
activities.
Do you want to see bigger brands?
No, I don't want another big brand. We're good enough. It's a small town. We've got a good enough co-op. We've got an 8 till late. We've got an Aldi. For me, that's enough for me. I like to shop locally, and there's enough going on for me.
Sorry, Margot set the alarms off again. I mean, maybe we can talk about that. We talk about crime, antisocial behaviour, alarms going off in the middle of the night. We can talk about that. It's kind of up to you. I mean, where do people want to go with this? Do you want to have a little bit more of a look of the Pendle house, just to see some of the other rooms? We haven't really looked at the kitchen.
Sorry, can I just pick up on the point you were making about the Barnoldswick? Sorry.
Yeah.
About the Barnoldswick being attractive. How much of that is down to the local council as opposed to Pendle Council?
Okay. I mean, I'm going to turn the mirror onto you. What do you think about that? Do you think Pendle could do more? Is it more about the local council? Is there enough kind of to and fro between those two bodies?
I don't know as I'm in a position to say that, but my experience is anything that happens in the town square is generally generated by the local town council. I don't know, maybe you can elaborate and say what input does Pendle Council have on the events in the town square.
Okay.
And there are some extremely, we've got the bands on the square and everything. Rebecca, you're
It's almost a long-term history.
Yeah.
Barnoldswick's got what it's got because of Barnoldswick efforts, despite the local authorities. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes they're not, but I think there's a mindset in Barnoldswick.
We do it ourselves.
We just do it ourselves, and it's the town council and residents and volunteers and others. Yeah. And if we can get the bonus of the local authority on board occasionally, then that's a perk. But I think there is definitely a self-determinism in Barnoldswick, maybe even further afield as well, in West Craven, but certainly in Barnoldswick. There's a can-do and will-do attitude, I think, that is too good to squander.
Yeah, okay. Hang on, I just want to bring in Paul in this, but also I want to say to Rick, maybe remove the KFC, because we don't want to see the KFC in this part, in the Barnoldswick version of the Pendle house. Go on. I'll come to you and then.
Okay. So do you think that situation is brought about because of reluctance from Pendle Council to get involved? Is that a situation where if they aren't going to do it, we'll have to do it ourselves?
I think it's more you're saying that you just got to get up and go, isn't it?
I think it's gobby people like us who just get stuff done rather than relying on others to do it for us.
It's not a battle, it's more of like, let's just get on with it, roll our sleeves up and do it. I mean, has anyone... John, do you want to say anything about this?
I will, yes.
Yeah.
I think a lot of town councils and the smaller councils are going to struggle because of the whole trickle-down effect of reduction in funding from the larger councils down to each borough council to each town council. And obviously we're being handed things to say, you're going to have to look after this park, otherwise we're going to close it. And we're not going to be in a position where we're going to say, okay, we'll close that park then, because we don't want that to happen. We want all our parks to be open. So we have to then make the decision ourselves as to how we handle that, and we have to take on the financial responsibility for it. So a lot of places are going to have this kind of same thing. It's like, do we keep it or do we close it? And nobody wants to be the one to close it. So we do struggle. Obviously, everybody struggles. There is funding. There is funding from Lancashire down to Pendle, down to our towns. Funding is available, funding is there. It's just that obviously we're all trying to get a little bit out of a pot that's getting increasingly smaller every single year. And so we have to struggle things like how much we put onto the council tax that's been paid for it as well. So we try and do our best with what the money we've got and how much we can raise.
Okay, so it is that same attitude that you're... What's your name again, sorry?
Steve.
Steve, that you're talking about. But I'm going to want to come to Sarah. have a seat on the table of chat. At the moment we're talking about, this is the pen, maybe Rick, you just zoom out for us for a second. Yeah. This is the Pendle House. Basically what we're trying to do is work out what is the Barnoldswick version of the Pendle House. We're kind of editing the Nelson and Colne version. We've already got rid of the KFCs because that's not appropriate. I would like a suggestion about what goes in its place. We're hearing a lot that Barnoldswick is full of people that just get up and do things, and you know, can that be more embraced? Is it just how it is? But we've got a new face at the table, so tell us your name.
James.
James, welcome. Let me just go around because I've actually, in the excitement, I've kind of forgotten everyone. So tell us your name.
Andrea.
And
Roger.
That's right. Yeah. And
John.
And
Margot.
Paul.
And Steve, wasn't it? And Sarah and Rebecca. Sarah, do you want to? Because you're representing in a way the Pendle Council. Do you want to say anything about that? About this? Is there a shrinking pot? Is there a chance for a better relationship between the town council and the? I mean, do people even understand who? I don't, certainly. Who does what?
Yeah.
Sorry, a lot of questions. Just answer. The way Talkie works is, I'll just throw a lot of questions, and you just say whatever you want to say, and just ignore the question.
It's fine, and I think as a member of the public receiving services in general, we're not too bothered where the service comes from, but we're bothered if it's a service that we want to access. But actually, in terms of local government structures, it's just quite complex in Lancashire as a whole, because we're a county, so we've got Lancashire County Council, 12 districts beneath that. Blackpool and Blackburn with Darwen are separate unitaries, but yet part of a bigger Lancashire picture. Yeah. So as a borough council, we're fairly small in terms of services that we deliver. And obviously, as has been said, there are town and parish councils within Pendle. And I think that's actually really important in terms of getting out to those neighbourhoods and those areas and being able to respond to local needs or put on events and do things like that. Is the pot shrinking? Absolutely. Absolutely, we have a massive funding crisis at Pendle Council. It's tough. We have less and less money coming from central government. A lot of services from Pendle Borough Council have transferred to town and parish councils. So quite a lot of services have sort of transferred over to allow that sort of local running of services as well. So,
it kind of is what it is.
I covered what you asked, but...
No, I think that's a very good answer to the question. We've got a new face at the table, so, oops, I've got some, I don't know, I've got some, who knows what's going on over there. Maybe turn this one up a little bit instead. So, I'll just explain what's going on. We're trying to sort of visualise the Pendle House. This is what we've got so far. Most of this has come from Nelson and Colne College, but we're editing it to have the Barnoldswick version of this. What we're finding out is that in Barlick people, I've got that bit more get up and go. So so we've already got rid of the KFCs. They're doing really well. They've got decent public toilets, so that's another. It's all good stuff. But we've heard that the money is shrinking. John is busy trying to find funding from wherever he can, even if it means, I don't know, playing the lottery or whatever it is, to get things happening. John's works for the local Barnoldswick Council. So that's where we are really, and we're just trying to sort of visualise, really, in a way, this is the reason why we're doing this, not just having a meeting, is it's trying to be a bit more imaginative. And actually, what we did with Nelson and Colne is we actually said, what are the positives and what are the negatives of the whole Pendle area, and how, if you were an estate agent and you were selling Pendle, what would you put in there as a positive? If you were a buyer and trying to knock down the price, what kind of things? And so we've been through quite a lot here, and you can sort of probably use your imagination about what some of these things are.
Bird's nest. What's the bird's nest about?
Can you remember, Margot? So let's get your name as well.
Joanne Shostak.
Can we just call you Joanne? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
And,
I think because that was representing the bedroom area of the house, So this is a nest, because I think Yeah, so I think the question was like, is Pendle a good place to fall in love with and settle down? And because I think a lot of people said like, yeah, it's good to grow up, but then it's good to move out and then come back to properly settle down.
Yeah, I mean, that's what... so far we've only been to the college and here, and what the young people are saying is no, we're not going to spend our whole lives in the Pendle area. We're going to go out, we're going to go to whatever, some big city, Manchester, London, but then we're going to come back and make our nest. There was this whole thing that you were going to find some partner from somewhere else and bring them back, haul them back to Pendle.
But then that's what
you did. Okay, let's hear a little bit more about that. Where did you?
I didn't go very far.
Yeah,
I only went to Skipton.
You went to Skipton,
but I moved out of Barnoldswick in 1979.
Yeah.
Went to Skipton, worked for Craven District Council,
Yeah.
and I was in the legal section,
Right.
walked down the corridor to the planning department,
Yeah.
and fell in love with the local planner.
Wow. Okay.
And he's sat over there.
Yeah. Okay, we'll have to have a. Yeah. Okay, so you.
He's from Huddersfield.
Okay, so you've actually gone, in effectively.
I would say more because our kids have done that. They've flown the nest, and like older people, that's what we want.
Yeah.
And the first thing we think about when they go is, was it a mistake? Will we ever see them again? Because one of them's the other side of the world, and the other one moved away. Alex has come back. He's brought a wife back. He's settled in Barnoldswick.
Where from?
He went to Sheffield. Well, he went to France.
Yeah.
Sheffield. He works in Cumbria, a long way off. They bought a house up there, but this is their home. The kids go to school here, which is just what Joanne always wanted. The trouble is they don't go to Gisborne Road, which is the school she wanted them to go to. But that's another story.
Yeah.
So there must be loads of people like that whose kids go away, and we sort of want them to come back, but sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
Because, our daughter's got a job working in a sort of a corporate. Yeah. And there isn't going to be a corporate job for her back in Barnoldswick, even if she travels to Leeds
it's
or
not
Manchester.
That you just don't really want her to come back. It's
no. Well, we have downsized as well.
Yeah.
Our nest is very small now.
Okay, so there is this thing happening,
our son's wife is from Sydney, Australia.
Okay, so it's a long way to drag someone all the way.
Yeah,
okay,
definitely.
So this is it is happening to something that we find in common with other parts of Pendle. This kind of going away, getting a mate and dragging them back to the Pendle area. Has anyone else got any stories like that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm from Colne originally. I live in Earby now, and I've stayed here. I mean, I went to uni, but I still came back at the weekends. I mean, there's something about this area that is just really, it's a nice place to be because of what's on offer here. But working with, we're an arts organisation, and we do lots of work with young people. And again, I mean, I kind of like this idea that that you can make things happen yourself. And then I made that choice, well, we're 10 years old this year, deciding to create something here in Pendle because I felt like there wasn't the kind of stuff on offer that should be on offer around arts and culture. Yeah. And then with young people, because we've started to see graduates that are coming back, so actually we want to make sure that it might not be the corporate stuff, but actually that there is some good quality creative opportunity for them to come back to. And that's like nobody else is going to do that. I mean, the council aren't going to do that or whatever. That is something that you have to
So someone's got to get up and say you want to do arts, you've got to do an arts centre, you've got to actually make
you've got to make those things happen to then create those opportunities for young people who are coming back and have got great ideas. Yeah. And I'm all for, I definitely think young people should go out and experience that. For me, going to uni was a huge experience. I mean, it probably feels very different now, but it was very eye-opening in terms of who you met because the internet wasn't around the same then. So it's important, but I think it's having stuff ready for when they do come back. It's like, actually, there's this really amazing stuff going on and you could do this and do that.
Okay, well, that's an interesting point. So you've created your own kind of thing because you wanted people to come back and experience the arts. But I'm going to go around the table on this one. If you were going to make something in the Pendle Borough to bring those young people back, what would it be? And I'm just going to go all the way around the table. Steve, have you got any thoughts on this?
Well, you mentioned earlier on what's the alternative to the KFC, and there is an alternative, and that's been much more helpful to local single brand owner-occupied businesses. So
it's actually about stimulating...
keep that independent retail flavour going. Yeah. We've always had an aspiration, I have anyway, an aspiration that Barnoldswick could eventually become a little bit like Hebden Bridge, right? Which is different. Yeah. People read scored music there rather than newspapers. So they're a slightly different clientele. But there's no reason why we can't aspire to that sort of creative
would you
backdrop.
put in a music venue?
Well, we've got a music venue. The Music and Arts Centre pulled in some pretty good bands, actually, for its size. You know, I think we're okay for a small town. It would require a bigger building, presumably, for anything to be more substantial. And I don't know whether that's easy to deliver or not.
Well, I mean, I don't think we're worrying too much. I know that Sarah's saying we've run out of money, but this is about the journey of the imagination. So we can. It's very quick and easy for Rick to put in like a huge music venue. Rick loves music anyway. In just to the side of the house instead of the KFC.
What we haven't achieved properly, and I can say this because I'm on the board of West Craven Together, the people who run the Raynall Centre. We haven't really built a bridge between the Raynall Centre and Pete Barton at the Arts and Music Centre.
Right, okay.
It could be the follow-on. It could be a bigger venue for his activities.
So
he's very good at drawing bands in. We have a slightly bigger room, and we could do a bit of work on
so
that.
maybe it's about connecting up the arts offer a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I don't think it's necessarily, here we go again. I don't think it's necessarily about money so much as it being about the assets and resources that are already there and how we're best to use those, or how we join up and how we work in partnership to make the most of what we've got. So I think sometimes it's thinking differently and thinking outside the box. And I think sometimes not having money allows us to be a bit more creative.
What would you put? Let's just step aside from being as I said, the representative of Pendle Council. What would you, if you were going to put something in the area? We've already got an arts centre, we've got music. What would you put in there just to bring people back to the space? So Andrew's got a point as well on that one, but we're doing around the table on this one. So hang on. Yep.
There was someone on Facebook saying they would like to see more art stuff as you were speaking, Paul. And I said what, and they just said anything really, just like
anything,
bit of everything they would like to see.
Like a smorgasbord of art.
Yeah, but I was going to say transportation's a big one, because you were saying about Hebden Bridge and Todmorden. I think one of the biggest reasons is that there's a mainline link between Leeds and Manchester. And I think if the train went from Leeds through up to Burnley, Manchester way, that would happen. I think it's really, people don't mind coming, but they also want to be able to still go in between easily. I mean, my mum lives in Irby, I work in Manchester. I live in Manchester, I work in Briarfield, and it takes me at least 2 hours on public transport on a good day.
Okay, so it's a bit of a travel nightmare.
And I remember living in Irby, and like when I was at college, it's really hard to get out of, to get anywhere. And like my sister worked in Costa in Skipton, nightmare to get back to, but she had a job, but then she had to give that up because it was so difficult to get in and out of. It's just really badly connected. I would say.
For you, the public transport.
And because you're on, because you're on the border, you just get really expensive fee and like not connected services. Whereas because a train line, there's still a bit of that. It's cheaper to go from Todmorden to Leeds than it is to go from Todmorden to Manchester, even though one is an hour and 10 and one is 25 minutes. But at least you can get there in 20 minutes, and it's not a massive slog. It's actually quicker to get to London.
Okay, so transport,
from Manchester than it is to get to Barnoldswick.
Okay, so it's pretty hard to get to, but is that something that people like?
Just pick up to say it's pretty difficult to get to. Martin, I'm not saying it's not right, because there's a regular bus service through the day. Come 7 o'clock or thereabouts, it's game over. So if you want a night out in Skipton or Burnley, you may be able to get there for 7:30, but you're coming back on a bus.
How much does a taxi cost from Skipton?
£20 from Skipton.
Yeah. How much from Burnley?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay, so I think there are some issues coming up here. We're actually supposed to be going around the table. What would you put in there? We've had, what was it? We had arts, we had music. What were you saying? You're saying cinema, okay, yeah.
So, I think I agree with the arts. We do have an arts centre in Burnley, which is a community interest company, which Christine, who's not here at the moment, has been trying to get off the ground for a long time. That's I got involved with that back in last year, doing art workshops. I've brought that here when I applied for a job here at I do events here now at Barnoldswick Town Council. So I'm trying to get trying to combine a little bit of that with events and trying to get a little bit more pull with you know, the younger crowd in the town. I think that's something definitely that needs to addressing. There seems to be plenty for the adults, plenty for the really young children, and then they've got this like free area in the middle.
You're just hanging around the toilets.
In toilets, and it's not just that, but there's like there isn't anything here. Like you say, the nearest thing is it's brilliant for adults, brilliant for young people. It's it's the middle ground, and like you say, that's another thing is the transport. The transport is a difficult thing. Like you say, after 8, I went over to Skipton one night, and I thought, oh, I'll get the bus back 8 o'clock. I'm like, what? Can't even get back to Barnolds. We had to get a taxi. And
how much did it cost?
I think I didn't pay £20. No, right? Very lucky. I think I paid about a tenner.
All right, you took them down. You took them right. Yeah, depends what time.
I do tend to gravitate towards Burnley because that's where I'm from initially. Takes about an hour to get to Burnley, 20 minutes in a car.
Yeah, so what's going on there?
But yeah, you can get back.
So it's all car-based. It's not great for young people.
There is some really good, absolutely wonderful things. Walks around here. It's beautiful countryside. I think there's a gentleman called Patrick Spain who's been trying to get in contact with us, trying to open up the walkways and connections in the town. So I think where we need to be looking at is connecting. It's connection. If we're off the beaten track, we need to connect. So whether that be through art, through meeting up with other people, with you know, these ideas, it's about creating that network. And once you start creating networks, things kind of fall together. So I think that's what that's what's needed in the town. It's making connections.
Okay, connections. We're going to put that down. I'll look at that. We've got an art and music centre. Rick's put it in. Thank you, Rick. James, what would you put into the text? Grab the mic.
Okay. But I was going to say, because of the arts, could there be some like art galleries for local artists? Because there's a few. The building going. I was going to say near the church. There's like 2 buildings that haven't been used, and they might be good gallery spaces.
Okay, so you think maybe use some of those empty spaces as art spaces? Yeah. Are you an artist yourself?
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
What kind of work do you do? I'm getting a weird interface. Anyway,
I'd say abstract spaces and a bit of photo montage.
Right. And you'd like a sort of venue in a way to show that. And what about? I mean, would you be happy if it was just people from Barnoldswick that saw it, or would you want people to come from further afield?
It needs to be a bit more. More for the young people scene and more for. I'd say more.
I mean, do you think
like a creative hub?
Do you think there could be a kind of youth bus that kind of drove around, just driving all those young people back?
They have one in Burnley, don't they?
They do have one in Burnley,
something like that would be fabulous something like that would be fabulous over here. You know, the bus that comes, the youth bus. Something, it's a space that's there and then it's not there, and you know.
Maybe we could just, twist the arm of the Burnley people so they can
have an art collective in Barnoldswick, because there's quite a lot in Leeds, and I'm not sure, maybe Skipton. It's more of an art scene, but maybe an idea.
Let me just, Paul, how do you set up an arts collective? Because you've got an arts collective that's based in Briarfield, so how do you do it? How did you do it?
Well, we just started off very small, managed to get a small grant of... Well, we got £10,000 initially, just to kind of work out what we wanted to do. We asked if we could use the library for free, because they had a room at the back. Sometimes you just have to ask these things, and it's just for us do a lot of time. Yeah, exactly. And so we're keen to encourage as much of that as possible for anybody. So like something developing in Barnoldswick would be great. I mean, I'm happy to come and talk about that and support it, and we're trying to do that through a cultural group. But that's all we did. We got a small amount of money, and then we built it from there, really, talking to the Arts Council.
So maybe it might be possible just to say to whoever owns the empty building, can we do that? I mean, how would you go about that?
Which empty building are we talking about?
You're talking about an empty building, weren't you?
The empty building near the church, that's going down from, near here and going down near Gisborne, near where you are.
Probably know more.
What was the old bank?
The old Yorkshire Bank, There's no Yorkshire Bank across there. There used to be 2.
Over that. It's round there.
Okay, we're definitely getting this,
I mean, this is the thing, it's about when... Some places have got lots of empty spaces, and often, it's cheaper for them to let someone to use it for free, than they don't have to pay the rates or whatever it is that they need to do. And it's just about asking. And even if it's for a temporary period, because we've done that, we've been in empty shops before, like in Nelson we had a shop for quite a period of time. that was empty. And sometimes you might have to move around, but if you just get a space, when you get a space, then that's when you can start to let things happen.
Yeah.
You know, we was doing stuff in an old mill for a long time at Briarfield, which is now being developed, you know, and it's just, well, sometimes it's not even asking permission, it's just going in and starting. So it's sometimes under the radar, which is what, you know, what we did initially.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you have to be cheeky and just have a do, you know. There's no harm in asking, is it? That's the thing.
Yeah, okay. So you started in the library and moved on from there. Some really good points. But it does seem that most of the things that people want in Barnoldswick, at least around this table, is kind of arts and culture stuff, isn't it?
We haven't mentioned jobs. Towns like Barnoldswick have a precarious relationship with some very big brands. So it's an impossible challenge. But if the government and the local authorities and the public sector in general aren't able to make sure that Rolls-Royce, Silent Night, Ousledale Foundry and others can continue to be prosperous, then some of this is almost an academic conversation, because the number of jobs that will be lost could be disastrous for the town.
You're a bit worried that it's going to turn into a bit of a ghost town?
Very worried about that, and waiting for that to happen is not acceptable. Letting it happen isn't acceptable, and starting to say about, well, we can always be a dormitory town for... These are bad things in my view. We need to have an economic heart of the town, and we are pretty well blessed actually. I've worked all over. I haven't worked in Barnoldswick, but I've worked in economic regeneration all over the country in Scotland, and small towns like us die immediately the major employers are pulled out. So that's for me the main priority for Barnoldswick.
What I'm going to do, Steve, is I'm just going to park that for now. I think we do need to talk about that, but at the moment we're focusing a bit more on the positive, but I think it is something we need to talk about.
Jobs, these are good jobs in Barnoldswick. So we shouldn't forget that.
Okay, well, Rick's put in a station there. It looks very similar to Charing Cross Station, but it's just a smaller version that goes. It fits very nicely under the hydroelectric dam. But anyway, the jobs thing I think is very important, and the economy. I've got my special economy button. But at the moment we're going around the table finding out what people would want to put in, and just a bit of, you know, I say it's just a flight of the imagination, but in fact, Paul used his imagination and actually went and started something in Briarfield. So, you know, these ideas can lead to something. Joanne, what would you like to see? And grab the mic.
Oh, cracky, right. Accommodation. If you're going to encourage all these people to come into Barnoldswick, and they maybe like to stay over, where are they going to stay? On Church Street, there used to be a pub on Church Street that used to have accommodation above. We used to have a bed and breakfast, Monk's House. I just wondered if maybe we could get some accommodation, or even a youth hostel. I know Abe's got a youth hostel, used to have a youth hostel. But, you know, if you're going to encourage youngsters in to come and see music, or this cinema that we're going to open, we used to have, I think, 3 cinemas in Barnoldswick.
That would solve the whole transport problem. Because
yes, it would, because they can stay over. And I don't mean extremely expensive accommodation. I mean accommodation that, you know, youngsters can afford.
So a youth hostel, really.
Youth hostel,
some kind of
bed
hostel.
and breakfast.
Okay. Let's go around. What would you like to see? Pass it on, okay.
Well, pick up what Steve said, to be able to encourage people to take part in these arts and the likes, they need to have the money. And we need to be encouraging employment in the area.
Are you concerned as well about that?
Yeah, not for me because I'm retired, but certainly for some of my granddaughters and the likes of that, I mean, picking up the point that Steve said about the town dies, if they're Rolls-Royce, for example, at one point there were 2,000 people worked there. I think there's 350 now.
Right, so it's
and I think what's happened over the last maybe 20 years is there's more people working out of, or coming into Barnoldswick to work as opposed to live here.
Right.
So I'm not just sure that the town dying is actually, I mean, it's obviously an issue. We don't want Rolls-Royce to go because that would have a major impact not just on Barnoldswick, but on the whole of the northwest. It's a big...
I mean, what about that question of remote working, though? Either it could be commuting, but, you know...
Well, that's all well and good. We're talking about manufacturing here. I'm not talking about somebody sat at a laptop and somebody who's actually producing something.
Yeah. And in your mind, that's a better type of work?
No, I'm not saying it's a better type of work. It's a work that's needed, as is your admin side, they're balanced, they don't they complement each other. One can't work without the other. But certainly manufacturing in Barnoldswick has diminished significantly over the last probably 10 years.
Okay, so you want to see more manufacturing. I think we're going to, in a second, focus on the jobs thing and the economy thing, but let's think about what we'd like to see, and then we'll go back, because I think it does seem like it's something that people want to talk about. John?
Yeah, I think it's been talked about earlier on. It's about having activities and things for people to do across all ages. And it's really a good idea to focus on young people, because obviously we see the negative side of what can be done if they aren't actually given something to do or something to help. But definitely against everybody as well, because as a town council we put on things that are trying to appeal to a broad range, and ideally we could have something to help to give more, to bring things in. So in the short term you can have people come into an event in town, just like the town council puts on, but also ongoing as well. So we want to have things where people keep coming back, so it's not just a once a year visit. We want somebody to come every week or every month and just carry on doing that, and then naturally things will increase as those carry on. We bring more people in, we'll get the things like places for people to stay, then obviously that increases the type of people coming here, and then again that'll promote businesses coming along and increasing in size. It's kind of a knock-on effect, I think, making it a more appealing place by having things for people to do.
So the appealing thing, I mean, going back to this question of the economy, is that important? Is that the appealingness, is that related to the economy? Are you concerned about the jobs and about, because I mean, Steve, you're feeling quite negative, and you're feeling quite negative about it as well.
About what?
About the possibility that some of these big industries, the Silent Nights and the Rolls Royces, might actually.
Well, I'm positive that they're here.
Yeah.
Very positive that they're here. Yeah. And I think my negativity is only if sloppy agencies and government departments allow some of the UK's best manufacturers to drift away or go abroad. It's not something West Craven can do. But is there anything? But there's a national policy there that should be about levelling up northern towns with an industrial heart like this. People should be doing all they can to make sure that remains a solid bedrock for our future economic development. That's all. So I don't think it's negative. It's just that I'm apprehensive, and I don't trust national politicians to do as much for our local economy as I'd like them to. That's all.
But I mean, sort of going back to this idea that people in Barnoldswick kind of do it themselves, is there anything at all we can do against that kind of prevailing?
Well, all we're going to do, if it's jobs, we're going to tinker at the edges, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're going to have small micro units, like we do at West Craven together up at Reynolds Centre. There's half a dozen, 10 units, all employing people, probably 20, 30 jobs. Nice enough. Useful, but that's not quite the same as 200 people with apprenticeship opportunities, career development opportunities, and gradual requirements to stay locally, and big wages. So it's a dilemma. I don't have the answer. Maybe it is trying to do some inward investment floating around the place and try and capture some of those bigger floating companies who would ordinarily go to Preston, Liverpool, Manchester, try and get them to West Craven. Not necessarily Barlick, but if there was land for that sort of development, then it's worth throwing our 2p in.
And what about this idea? I mean, I don't know how popular it is, but the idea of, like, obviously we've got Rick, he's remote working on this from London, but what we see in London is a lot of people now moving out of London, and then they come to smaller places and work on Zoom, or they work remotely. Is that a possibility, or do you think that?
Well, I work in Glasgow, so yes, that's a possibility.
Right, so you're actually doing that right now?
I've been doing that for 2 years.
Right.
So, yes, but it's helpful because it means that people like me who would otherwise perhaps move out can stick around and stay local and stay committed to the local area.
Yeah.
And I suppose it also means that we don't necessarily need a 500,000 square foot of industrial space on the corner, because people, some of them at least, particularly the office people and the designers, the ITs, can possibly work remotely. But I do take the point. This is an industrial town.
Yeah.
This town has always been an industrial heartland of the Northwest. And I'm not saying that romantically. I'm saying it as a fact, There are many people and their family have grown up 3 or 4 generations in the manufacturing heart of East Lancashire. So I think it's worth fighting for, frankly. And if somebody's going to be manufacturing something somewhere in the UK, why not bring it to Barnoldswick?
And how, just one more question, how do you fight for it? Because you're saying this is like the national agenda, government, global economics.
Well, we have to have an economic strategy that reflects our needs, not just Nelson's needs, for example. We have to play to our strengths of this part of Pendle, because there are strengths in terms of relocation. Plenty of, I do a lot of inward investment with other clients. People move for loads of reasons that are a bit quirky, and they're often good schools, nice places to live, posh houses in the countryside, not necessarily the skill structure of the local community. So playing to our strengths is what we would ask our local politicians, regional politicians and national politicians to do, and to recognise that there are hundreds of towns like us. Our time is now. All across the country, there are small peripheral towns that are not cities that fit every agenda these days for better places to live, better places to bring up your kids, and given an industrial infrastructure, better places to build and expand factories.
Okay, do people agree?
My wife doesn't agree with the factories.
Okay, you don't agree with the factories, but do people agree that there are hundreds of towns like Barnoldswick?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there are. But I think one of the things about Barnoldswick that I've been here since 1960, born in Skipton and raised in Barnoldswick. The unique thing about Barnoldswick was the individual little shops that we've had here, the very friendly atmosphere that we've got here, and that's what brought me back to Barnoldswick to bring my children up here was the people actually. And I used to buy the school uniforms here, the shoes for school. You could buy everything in Barnoldswick. You didn't have to get on a bus, you didn't have to get in a car. You walked into Barnoldswick and everything was there for you. I like that about Barnoldswick, the individualness, that's its uniqueness, I think, is Barnoldswick.
Well, I mean, that's really my question, because is it really like hundreds of other towns, or is it individual, all these towns individual in their own way, or is Barnoldswick particularly individual?
Well, I'm probably a bit biased because I'm from Barlick, you know, and I've always loved it here. I've been away, I've moved away, my kids have moved away, but they're back in Barnoldswick now. There's just something about Barnoldswick that you just want to come back to.
And for you, it's the friendliness, it's the niceness.
Well, I've got a lot of family here, I've got a lot of friends here. Obviously, the schools are great. My children are back here. We just love the atmosphere. My husband's come from Yorkshire to live in Lancashire.
Working in Glasgow.
Working in Glasgow, yes. Well, there we go. So there must be something that's drawn him here as well. But yeah, I love Barnoldswick. Absolutely love it.
Okay, I mean, that's like I'm going to give you a round of applause for that one. But yeah, John?
Yeah, I think the answer to the question you said, I think there are a lot of towns like Barnoldswick in Pendle that are all suffering the same kind of problems, have all got the same kind of issues. And I think exactly what you said here is that the way that Barnoldswick works is different. So there's things that keep it all the same, but the things that are different are the things like the high street that we've got, the fact that we don't have that many brands, but that we've got bank, and that's essentially it, or we've got a supermarket, but the rest of the whole town centre is all individual shops. And that's what we all want to see. Everybody would be against a large chain coming in. We were very supportive about our neighbours who are working at the big plants when they announced layoffs and things like that. We're very supportive when they had strike action the other year. Everybody was really with it. And I think it's that unity that's slightly different. I think you'll find people are more likely to praise Barnoldswick if they live in it than in other places that may be negative towards the town a bit more. And that's possibly the biggest difference.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like there's this strong spirit here, that's for sure. I don't know. It's kind of up to you where you want to go with this conversation. Whether you want to talk about bringing, because this is also about Pendle at large, and there's a few things that you suggested. Could we export some of the Barnoldswick spirit, some of this get up and go, to other parts of Pendle? That's one question. There's also, maybe we want to go back to the house. We haven't really talked about the kitchen. We've not talked about we talked a bit about the nest, the bedroom, but we're now obscuring the living room.
Can I just mention about the house and where it's actually situated there? Because I think, to be honest, in Barnoldswick in particular, building a house in a kind of a green area is something that I think we're pretty much all against, because as we've lots of people have mentioned, it's an industrial town. We've got lots of old mills and old sites, brownfield sites, plenty of those that could be redeveloped, but instead we seem to be getting quite a lot put through on the outer, the outer rings, the green areas and things like that. So I'd prefer to see this house itself actually move into somewhere
we can do that.
that was a bit more industrial.
If you can change that green background there at the bottom there to brown, to symbolise the brownfield site, and it's an old factory.
While you're on housing, one thing that I have noticed is social housing. There's not much of it.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get social housing in Barnoldswick. Now that's a positive, obviously, because so many people want to live here.
Yeah.
We'll have to turn that off. But then, like I say, it's very, very difficult to get any social housing.
Okay.
Brought that one up.
Okay. So it's kind of up to you where you want to go with this conversation. Do you want to talk about the jobs thing? Do you want to talk about the export? In a way, we're not talking necessarily about exporting products, but exporting a spirit. Margaret, you've not said much for a while, so just...
I'm just interested whether there is much of a kind of pathway for young people to get involved in the industry. I mean, I'm not from this area, I'm actually from Poland, so this is, this is kind of a new area for me, but, so I'm just interested in this industry and whether it's easy to kind of, for a young person to say, I'm just going to start a business. Is there a pathway? That's my question number one. But secondly, I just really love the idea that you've made about, you said about, using old buildings to kind of present art, but also maybe I don't know, like in the cities, art is also like like public spaces are also places for like political act or like activism or like making points about the area. And I know we were talking about toilets, and it's always like a conversation about toilets, but it's just something that she said that she went to get the door, I think. But could we have art in like unusual places? Is there a kind of like quirky artistic side to this area that we can explore and use the local artists to help us kind of develop?
Can the artists actually help us explore that, really eke out that sense of the spirit of Barnoldswick?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm obviously as an organisation, that's what we want to try and do, is to try and look at things creatively. Artists have a way of looking at the world, and I think for me there's this whole thing about economics that I'm trying to understand, and it's obviously clearly you've got quite an understanding of it now, and how do we, is the answer that we still need, because obviously working in Nelson and Briarfield as well, I think Briarfield in particular is a town that is the result now of the mill, which employed 3,000 people at one time, closing down, and the impact that that's had on that place. It's completely decimated that, and obviously it's people from different backgrounds have kind of gone into their own areas rather than kind of mingling in one place. So the idea that could happen to Barnoldswick, is a bit like, is that a potential of doing it? But I'm also interested in is that as a local community, or even as a global community, can we keep existing in these traditional economic sort of models? And I'm trying to understand a little bit more. I'm reading at the moment about something called donut economics, which are a bit more circular, which can kind of look after themselves a little bit. So we're talking about donut thing, and I think there's elements that you can see in small towns, but I think there is a reality, like you're saying, they are just it's just around the edges. There's a number of people that needs jobs, and these we end up with these big industrial estates. Nelson, Loamshire is getting bigger and bigger, where you're just getting people working in low-skilled jobs, picking and packing sort of things and all that, which, is kind of in existence, you're getting the money, but is there a way that you can exist where there's a bit more kind of love out of what you're doing? But this Pendle is, it is apparently nationally, it is a place that's got the most advanced manufacturing companies in one place in the whole of UK, so it is a massive selling point as well, isn't it? It's a very specialist, skilled industry.
That we sort of like, there's a fact. I don't know if people knew that, or is it something that people actually
it is
celebrate
still,
enough?
It isn't. in the stuff that's come through the Life of Pendle survey, which is like a precursor to some of these conversations, you know, it's one of the biggest stats in terms of employment. Well, there's two things actually. One is that advanced manufacturing or manufacturing is still a key employer. But actually, if somebody does start a business in Pendle, a small business, they are likely to keep that going
so it's got
for 5 years or more. So there is a success. There is, this good stats on people that start a small business, whether it's these smaller ones, that they do last. So there is a mix of like the big stuff and the little stuff, really. And I'm kind of interested in kind of working out what the future is, and what we're interested in is how we can look at that. You know, lots of artists are exploring this in all sorts of different countries. Interesting stuff happening in Europe and things like that around this. And I think there is a lot to look. I think Nelson can learn a lot from Barnoldswick. It's a very different place, but actually that kind of get up and go attitude, people working together a little bit more, is something that we're trying to encourage over a number of years in. Over the next few years, and there is some investment coming into Nelson, and I know that can be, you know, contentious in terms of who's getting money where, you know.
I mean, we've gone a bit more industrial on this now. I don't know if it,
One interesting point where you're saying about small businesses growing. A classic example is Hope Engineering, because they started in a small shed in Nelson. And they're now relocated to Barnoldswick. In what was a big weaving shed.
I mean, what do you think about this idea, you know, because you were saying, Steve, you've got to have these huge companies that actually employ loads of people, because the little tiny companies will not do it. Do you think it's possible for just hundreds of these small companies to actually provide that economy?
Rolls-Royce is one of the biggest employers in Barnoldswick, solely, but there are also a significant amount of satellite businesses that rely on Rolls-Royce for the work.
So there's an ecosystem in a way, isn't there?
That's sent out. Mainly engineering, but nevertheless it's manufacturing work.
Okay, so there's maybe this ecosystem of stuff. It's not just one business on its own, it's actually that fabric, isn't it? But I mean, is there a relationship between that kind of arts fabric and those kind of arty things that you want to see, James, and this kind of more you know, more industrial, more engineering side? Is there a way to get those two things to merge together?
They both need to run in tandem, don't
they? They don't need to work together. Why do they need to be part and parcel? They can be part of the same. It's more a question whether they can help each other. They can be part of the same strategy, but I think they're different elements. You know, if people are looking for an apprenticeship, as you're on the phone, but very strong in this area. So the local employers are good at providing apprenticeships for local kids. The college is very good at making sure kids go to local apprenticeship opportunities, and so generally we're happy about that. I think we are anyway, and feel fairly blessed that youngsters do have opportunities. There is a little bit of that. Oh, it's what my dad did. Do I really want to do the same as he did? He spent all his life working in Rolls-Royce. Yes, he did, and he's got a massive pension. He did very well out of it. So there are economic benefits of working some of those employees because they pay well. But I mean, art is an opportunity for those who perhaps have what might be called mundane factory jobs to do something a little bit more creative with their downtime, perhaps. I don't think it's necessarily one or the other, or that we should all get jobs being artists. But I think it's a mix of those things.
I mean, my question was more about how those things inform each other. Is it, you know, because there's that sort of sense of sort of self-starting, which is common in both of them, this kind of, you know, and are we doing enough to foster that sort of inventiveness, which I think, you know, it seems to be a key thing here, this inventiveness and this creativity, be it on a manufacturing side or a, you know, cultural side.
I would certainly advocate personally, because I like industrial archaeology, and this area is industrial. So if there was an option to paint lovely rural countryside with sheep, or a semi-derelict industrial environment, and make a piece of art out of that, I'd be for the second, not the first, because of that industrial heritage. So I do think there's a story that's unique about the built infrastructure around here that is not the Yorkshire Dales nonsense, because I do think that's nonsense. That's somebody else doing something else. That's the countryside. We're a bit more borderline urban-rural here, I think. For me, anyway, that's what I think. So I think there is an opportunity for art to celebrate some of that.
Okay, well, we've been following. Now we've got the band playing. I feel like I'm in a sort of sequel to Brassed Off or something like that. But you know, I've got my hat on, so that's all right. So yeah, once again, where are we going to go at this? Do we need to amend some of these things? I mean, there was one of the things we were talking about a lot in Nelson was this sustainability. That's why there's still the solar panels on the roof. There's a recycling. There's we didn't really get into it, but this idea of locally grown foods. Is sustainability a question here, or is it more about economic sustainability? Does this strike any
when we were doing this in Colne, going out and about, but not this thing, but just talking to people, there was, she's in her 20s and she was from Bonoldswick, she was with her dad. She lived in London and wasn't coming back anytime soon. And I think that's one of the issues is sort of the ideas in that generation and that kind of the get up and go that is there might leave for a bit, but then might not got up and went, as it were. But I think that happens across the board. Like, so industrial strategy wise, like, so Manchester University, the amount of intellectual property it creates is massive, but the amount of it that's actually invested and developed in the UK is actually quite small. So you invest in the university system, like graphene, for instance. I think the amount of patents put in on graphene across the world was a lot more than what was put. It's the lightest construction material ever invented.
And that's invented in Manchester.
In Manchester, they've got the Graphene Institute, but I think South Korea put more patents for actual production to make money on it. Than we did here, because it's about it's that industrial strategy from like, and I'm just thinking about Pendle as an industrial area from the ground up, like you were saying about Hope Engineering. If you've got those intellectual property, if you've got those inventions happening, how do you then kind of take that through? And I think sometimes we fail on the taking it through bit. Like we're good at the academic side, we're good at
isn't that maybe what Britain wants to do, is invent loads of stuff that other people then go and be successful with?
But then it makes very, like, it doesn't, you kind of, you're almost exporting, you're paying for it, like you're just getting rid of it. Which you want other people to do stuff, but you also want to do stuff with it yourself as well. I think it's just doing it in a mutual way rather than... keeping it all. So you can't keep it all.
So instead of cutting edge research, it's bleeding edge research. That's what we like to say down south. But I'm
just thinking, because what you were saying as well about making sure Rolls-Royce doesn't disappear, that the government have a role to play in that. I don't know whether that's more central government than it is local government, but it's understand that system, isn't it? Because that's quite an interesting fact, that if we invest in this kind of ideas generation through universities, yet there isn't a strategy. And I guess, and I wonder what is it that's through the local plan, or what is it that the strategy that would help that happen for Pendle, to nurture that. I mean, that's it's kind of it's understanding what is the government role within this at a local level as well as at a national level, and we are constantly trying to fight for this part of Lancashire. I mean, Lancashire full stop probably, but East Lancashire in particular, that feels like we're constantly missing out on these opportunities to drive this from central, government.
So you feeling like central government's kind of letting down this area?
Well, it does. I mean, what I feel like, from my experience of it so far, and particularly the experience of being involved a bit with the stuff in Nelson, is that what they're saying is there's never anything that's either shovel ready or oven ready for when the money comes. Because when the money does come, they want you to spend it so ridiculously fast. I mean, the processes are ridiculous, when money appears, So it's that thing of how do you get ready for it when we're already under-resourced to maybe turn these ideas into realities, or, you know what I mean? Or, I mean, I don't know how it all works with Rolls-Royce and what the support needs to be in case that gets lost. And I know that knowing a little bit about Smith and Nephews back in that time, there was an opportunity where it could have stayed in Briarfield, but they didn't get, from what I understand, they didn't get planning for another chimney for some process, and then it just thought, okay, well, we'll leave, and it went to Houston and Mexico, and suddenly all those jobs are gone, from one sort of decision, and it's kind of, sometimes those things, it's like, can you ever have an impact on it?
The planning people.
Well, Well, I mean, from what I understand, there was an issue of something they wanted to do that wasn't given permission for. That then helped the decision to make. Well, okay, we'll take it to somewhere where they can do it. And then suddenly a factory of 3,000 people shut down, and they got some people went to Houston and to work there, but yeah, there's kind of like these things that kind of affect that, don't they? Where it needs to sit.
No,
it's quite a nice backdrop.
Yeah, it's a good background music. Okay, so
I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No, but I mean,
it's kind of like it's how at what level do you need to understand that bigger picture to then affect when you're just living and working in a small places like this.
But I mean, it just the weird thing is, it just goes to show in a way, it's a little bit of powerlessness, because a multinational company could just decide we're going to move production to Mexico. And, be it about planning it, or are they just throwing their weight around and going, okay, we're not going to work with you, goodbye. And then, if you're dependent on that, then there is an underlying anxiety, which I think there's a few people have got.
I can completely understand where you're coming from. I will. I completely understand where you're coming from. Like I say earlier, I'm from Burnley, and once upon a time you could walk out of a job and walk out back into another job in manufacturing the same day. It's a lot of the factories have closed. A lot of the manufacturing's ceased. They moved abroad. People who worked in the factories in the town trained the people abroad, and then they moved it over there. And the town has declined rapidly, and it's not a nice place to live anymore. The outskirts is, but and I've seen that firsthand. I mean, Burnley Council have done very well to maintain the parks and keep that aspect, really investing in the parks. But with regards to economic, like you were saying, I mean, it's gone downhill. I know, and it sounds really sad. And so I've lived, like I say, I've lived here 2 years now, and I can understand where a lot of people's anxieties are with regards to.
I mean, is that just too big a thing to sort of be talking about this table, because it's like these big companies?
Where does it start? Where does it ever start? I think
go on, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, it is huge. It does boggle my mind, to be honest, and I work in policy, but it's I think it's how we all interlink, isn't it? So what we know is that we lose our young people. They get qualified, they don't necessarily come back. We know the economic development is huge, and we know that could be a real key for young people coming back. We also know that transport links and connectivity could be better, that in general that east to west sort of link, it doesn't really exist in a way that it makes it easier. Like you say, it's probably easier to get down to London from Preston or Manchester, and here it can be really difficult, just heading into Skipton from, and it, not necessarily from here, but if you look at the other end of Pendle, and Pendle as a borough, we're quite spaced out. You've got a collection of towns and villages, so that increases those sort of challenges, I think, with transport. So it is absolutely huge, but I think what we've got to keep sight of it. If that's an issue, we need to know that that's an issue for people and look at what can we do about it. So say for Pendle Borough Council, who can we lobby, who can we influence, which government departments can we be in touch with, or Network Rail, or whoever it might be around transport links, where we can have that influencing role and have some weight behind because people are saying this is what we need and this is what's important to us. So it's that sort of evidence building. So I think, it's very big and a bit scary, but actually, can we break it down, and what's our bit that we can play in that?
Is it a bit frustrating though when it sounds like you want to spend money on all these things when actually, as people said, I don't know if this is a mixed metaphor, but the pot is shrinking, maybe the purse is shrinking, something like that. But you're actually wanting to spend and invest in all these different things, but the money's getting let. I mean, is that frustrating? Is that?
It is, but I think also, we've lived in times where there's been money. When I first came into local government, and it was, community cohesion, and there was neighbourhood renewal funding, and various different SRB, different pots of funding. Really, what happened as a result of that, for me, what's important is looking at the resource that we have and what we've got, and thinking about what we do with that. Because actually, if we know what our priorities are, we can focus on that. Maybe actually as organisations, I don't just mean the council, but in general, maybe sometimes we take the eye off the ball a bit, and if we don't know what the priorities are, we're wasting time over here, or we're taking at the edges where actually we can put more resource in, we can link up with other key partners and pull that to work better together. And I think that's what this process is about. So if we don't know what our corporate plan is, if we don't know what those priorities are, then how can we tailor it in the right way, you know? And it needs to be achievable, but it needs to meet the needs of residents.
So in a way, nothing's really off the agenda. Even these big things, actually you can spend time and effort lobbying government, talking to the infrastructure people like Network Rail, and actually try to make those things happen.
Yeah, and I think what we need to commit to do, certainly as a borough council, is to say to people, we will lobby and we can do this, but we cannot do, we're not directly responsible for it, but this is what we can do and this is what we can't do, you know, and bring people along in that way where it's an open, transparent conversation.
There's a pretty good enough example. I'm sure this will not happen, but Rolls-Royce is pitching internationally to be the centre of excellence for small modular reactors in the nuclear sector, right? And it'll probably go to Sheffield, because that's the centre of manufacturing excellence. Sheffield, probably, because that's where Rolls-Royce are investing millions and millions in R&D. Sheffield's got its act together as a region. They've pulled in huge amounts of resources, and they will have the centre of excellence for manufacturing, and probably align themselves to be the location for the manufacture of etc. But that doesn't mean to say that we should not know about it or not care. We've got a Rolls-Royce here, and presumably local Rolls-Royce middle managers and senior managers would want to know that their community, even though they know we can't do much about it, are at least supportive of something like that if they were to pitch and throw their hat into their international ring.
Would you like to see nuclear reactors
I would like to see nuclear reactors manufactured anywhere, frankly, but if we can get jobs out of it in Barnoldswick, I'm okay with that.
Okay, well that's going to make a great visual for the house, a nuclear reactor. So that's small modular. Yeah. So Rick, a little one, not a big one, a small one, there's a point over here. I think you wanted to say something.
It was just about the infrastructure and the lobbying, because the motorway ends right in the middle of Colne, and everybody's been saying for years, why is it, can we not just extend it from there? We've got the Colne to Skipton railway that's been, they've been trying to get that for years, and it just feels like you can say these things, but you're not going to get anywhere with them. It must be at least 25 years, I think, for the Colne to Skipton railway. It's been going on forever trying to get that up and running again. So how do you get these things?
Hang on. There used to be a Colne to Skipton railway.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Used to be a branch line into Barnoldswick.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
It was the beaching cuts,
So there is still a railway?
It goes to Colne and terminates, and it's a single line. And then it goes from Skipton to Leeds electrified, which is really good service, actually. But the other side of it's really terrible.
What I don't understand is why make it like a long cul-de-sac instead of connecting it up to Skipton? What was the thinking there? Does anyone know? Back in... Was this in the 1960s?
Yeah, the beaching report that did it.
They cut it in the 60s. Whoever built it will have been a Victorian. You know, hundreds of years ago, it would have been built. And presumably Barnoldswick was not important enough to be on the main route, so we had a branch coming from, I think it was here, is it round about Earby? A junction of, from Kelbrook, that's right. So we had an in and out.
And do those railway lines still exist, or the
Joanne used to go on a holiday on a train
on holiday
from Barnoldswick. How about that?
Okay, tell us.
The coal yard used to be here. The coal yard used to be there, and you used to go and pay your coal bills. I used to go with my mum to pay the coal bills across there. And I remember the line, and I remember it all there, and then it just disappeared.
We're on Station Road. This is Station Road.
This is Station Road.
Yes.
Where there ain't no station.
No station.
Okay, I mean, so there is an infrastructure possibility, at least.
Bit of a geek. So in terms of local government, and you were saying about like lobbying and not getting anywhere, and then Sheffield doing really well. So Sheffield, I guess they got, it's a city region now with the mayor. So I think Greater Manchester, the more powers they've had devolved, the more they've been able to do. North Yorkshire's just become a unitary authority, is that right? So and Cumbria's been split into two, not that they necessarily wanted to, but what do people think about the argument for an East Lancashire kind of unitary authority that is Pendle, Burnley? Is it too fractured, and is there not enough of a national voice because all the areas have quite a lot in common? I'm just putting it out there.
You're confusing me now because we've already got Barnoldswick Council, we've got Pendle Council. No, but I just thought
that higher level reputation of an area to being able to lobby.
Yeah.
Is Lancashire County Council not, because that's another option, isn't it? Kind of making. I don't know about these things, but I know it's been mooted in the past.
I don't know. Do we need to restructure?
Would it give more of a voice? I don't know, or because it seems to be helping certain regions. North Yorkshire have decided to do it, I guess, for that reason.
We work a lot on a Pennine footprint anyway, so sort of across the whole of East Lancashire. You find that services organise themselves like that quite often anyway, and sort of you find that Lancashire will split itself into three because it's just so big. So you have your local agencies working on whatever issue it might be together. It's been mooted loads of times, and I don't really know where it's at. It never seems to get very far other than an idea. Obviously, it's local government devolution, and there was loads of stuff behind that and how that would work. So I think absolutely it's an option. Whether it'll ever come to fruition, I don't know.
Actually, don't hold your breath. Keep on with it. Let them do their politics, and locally just keep on.
Well, this seems to be the way things work around here, isn't it? It is just get on and do whatever you can, but there's so many different sort of, ebbs and flows, let's say, and different kind of prevailing political winds. It seems like quite hard for the small ship of Barnoldswick to kind of sail on that.
I like the point you made about the negative of not having shovel-ready ideas. There's no reason why you can't have shovel-ready ideas. So put effort into getting things on people's shelves in the event of funny money suddenly being available, or a government whim coming in and suddenly somebody wakes up to the north and needs votes. Here's on the shelf of West Craven a dozen excellent capital ideas with revenue support ready to go. Press the green button. So I think there's no excuse for not being active in those areas and coming up with ideas that we think collaboratively are developable.
I think Rick's put in his nuclear power station at the back there. I think you've got a bit large scale. We were talking about a small reactor, Rick, not like Dungeness power station there. But anyway,
I think
it's your interpretation, Rick. So just you do what you want to do. But anyway, go on.
I think it'd be interesting to see whether there's a process that can develop alongside local government, even if it's through the town councils, around these ideas, because often what you find is that there's maybe certain people that are in the know when this money appears, and then a system is set up that then has this kind of crazy timescale to it, where people just feel like they're rushing to get to get something in. I mean, shared prosperity is an example of that now, which is just, I mean, it's £3.5 million coming into Pendle to spend on ideas. 2 weeks notice to put in an application for an investment plan, and it's like, this is just, so either
you've got
if we had ideas, they got it, or you haven't, and if you're in the know, you're not. I mean, I think a system of where these kind of conversations could be happening all the time to help get these things ready, I think, rather than just always reactionary. I think that's the frustrating.
I mean, what you're talking about
that's
is
what
like
needs to happen.
Some plans that are, waiting. One day the money will come.
Yes.
And then that's the moment. But as you say, you have to have the plan ready to go. John.
Well, I think with that idea, though, it's kind of a chicken and egg kind of situation, because you need some money to be able to have somebody doing this and putting these ideas together, and then for the money to actually come in to pay for them. So without having some money to start off with, then trying to get those ideas ready to go, like you're saying, and then when you say, oh, we've got some of the funding ready, that doesn't last forever either. So you can hold on to that for as long as possible, but then by the time the proper, the thing that you really want to come through comes through, then the other stuff has fallen through and it's gone somewhere else. So I think it's all kind of quite short-termy stuff to be a plan like that on the hope that this money's going to come in, and you've got to invest in that to start off with. And with times as they are right now, there's not that much money going spare to say, well, let's invest that in something that might happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit abstract, isn't it, to spend loads of money on a document that's ready to go.
That could just sit and then eventually never be touched because the right funding didn't come through or the right amount didn't come through. That kind of thing. You know, falling short and mean that you don't, you can't get it because you can't get the whole funding.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a tricky situation. Should we be creating a library of plans? Could you kind of come up with some artificial intelligence way of generating these funding plans that just kind of picks and chooses from all the successful things that Sheffield does and somehow, or other towns as well, Manchester, and actually just generates it? You just hit the button. Maybe we need to use our technology a bit more, I don't know. Where do we want to go with this? I feel like we're going into the last leg of this conversation. We haven't really been much into the kitchen of this house. The living room's got obscured, but it sounds like people don't really want to spend much time in the living room unless they're on Zoom. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, where do we want to go with this? Do we want to go back to the house and just have a look and see what we've got? We've got a lot more industrial here, which is interesting, because I thought coming to Barnoldswick it's all going to be, you know, like sheep and kind of, you know...
tourism came up, like there was lots of tourists when we were in Barlake Town Square that were here. Like from all over, they were here for weddings in Clitheroe and visiting Barnoldswick. There was a lady from Middleton with her daughter camping. So I guess that's probably another aspect of the economy, isn't it? You don't want to be overly reliant on it, but it's definitely got to be, and transport would massively help with that. And they all said local independents look great. And they all liked walking around, and that will really help those shops. So I guess... I guess that's another layer to it.
I mean, we haven't really reflected that in this version.
The landscape is the key thing about that, isn't it? The hills, the location. But the industrial history is important too. Yeah. For sure. Are people going to come and visit the industrial heritage? They do. I mean, they do. I mean,
with tourism. A useless tourist is somebody who comes looking around and spends nothing. They can stay where they live and not come. We want the ones who are going to come and spend money. That's of value to us, because if they're going to come and use the free facilities or bring their Tesco bag of shopping from wherever they live and have a picnic in our town square without spending anything on our shops, we're a bit disappointed. So I think we need to nurture a particular style of tourism or visitor economy that recognises part of what we'd love them to do is open their wallets when they arrive. Okay. And then help us to nurture and grow that offer and make it much more varied. There are loads of people come to Barnoldswick for loads of events. It's breathtaking, actually, sometimes how many people there are in town for bands on the square, for the Christmas lights switch on procession. There will be hundreds and hundreds of people queuing around every single street of the town with their kiddies and banners up. The balloon festival was fantastic. I don't know if they still do that, but we've had some fantastically high profile reasons for people to come here, and I think that's a lot down to most of you guys around the table, the local authorities who seem to get in the right place at the right time and pitch for these sorts of monies. But for me, I would worry if we pampered to what we perceive to be tourism needs without necessarily recognising we're an industrial infrastructure here. Come and visit it for good reasons. I mean, but we're not going to start...
come and see nuclear reactors being built?
Absolutely. The one at Sellafield was the biggest was the biggest tourist attraction for 20 years in Cumbria. Really? Visiting the nuclear reactor at Sellafield. So, yes, visit anything. Industrial factories are very interesting places to visit.
To me they are,
really
I feel like I'm just... to be honest, I feel like I'm just the sort of, you know, the weirdo that like wants to go and see factories. I mean, Rick knows, because Rick's sister used to work for the factory that made veggie burgers in Wales, and then they never let me in because they thought I was like some kind of industrial. Why does this person want to go and see a veggie burger factory? But you know, anyway, that's another story for another time.
No, but I like this idea of visiting factories and stuff. But there's a place, was it in Saltaire? There's that big factory. Yeah, I went there and I was really disappointed. I just felt it was like overdone. It was like there was nothing about not enough about the history of the building, which is really what I was interested in.
It's mostly about David Hockney,
I'm not disinterested in the area or visual art, but it was just like walking into a massive shop. So I think getting the balance right between what style of tourism we want to encourage is really important.
I mean, I think that's Steve's point, that you can just imagine what a tourist wants, but it may not actually be right what the actual tourist does.
I'm just going to add on to something that you said just earlier about having all these people come in. One of the things that I think Pendle can really help Barnolds with doing is keeping our car parks free of charge. I think if we do actually end up having to charge in for that, I think that's going to do, like a lot of places, it's going to wipe out quite a lot of just passengers.
Isn't that going to suck up some of that tourist revenue though, if you start to charge people?
I think people
it's what we do in London, we charge and we charge again, and to the point where no one even wants to have a car. I think, as we've just talked earlier on, we need to have cars, don't we? Because we're so cut off that we do need this transport. And I think if it does move to being charged car parks and charge parking, then I think that's going to be a massive turn off, and that would massive negative hit on the town. So keeping those things free, even if it's disc, I mean, disc, it's got its place, and that's perfectly fine. I think the moment we start charging is the moment we start losing people. Okay, it's no charging for car parks, I mean, how does that fit with the sustainability agenda that the young people wanted? James?
Maybe like an eco-tourism, so it's sustainable for the area, and it's also...
I mean, what would that look like? What were the kind of elements would be eco-tourism?
I'm trying to think what... could be cycle-friendly, also like a health food shops.
Right, okay.
Or maybe like that.
So could you actually build on that sustainability thing? That's what I think certainly the young people in Nelson and Cohen College wanted to see.
And also maybe like some kind of art trail, which is, encourages people to cycle between different places. But I'll just go a funny story about my friend's parents who've got a piece of field in the Cotswolds. Apparently his dad, because he charged so little for people parking in his field, he got sabotaged by other farmers who were charging much more.
What, so
for
there's a racket going on where like farmers charge parking?
Yeah, because they can. I think they're near, is it Bolton on Naze? Oh gosh, one of those like Cotswoldsy places. I have been there before. And I lived in the Cotswolds, but that it's just skipped my mind.
It's a little bit of a little beef between the farmers.
Yeah, but that's just an extra bit of money they're earning. But my friend's dad is just taking it a bit like lightly, and the other people go like, no, it's £10 a day and no less. And he's like, oh, give us £2, and
So there's a bit
they really hate him. Anyway,
he's
a hated figure.
In the Peak District as well, when you go to certain popular walks, all the farmers locally, they literally run it like a business at the weekends.
Okay. I mean, could that be a little bit of a racket, charging people to go up Pendle Hill? Park there?
I think that's maybe an example of that kind of donut thing, isn't it? Because I know there's
are you back to the donut again?
The arts. There's an arts organisation in Liverpool that I know that have ownership of a big chunk of land as part of their building, and they're near Anfield ground. So what they do is when they open up their car park for people going to watch football, and they make an absolute killing off it, but they put all that money back into then running programmes for communities and young people. So stuff just by having a piece of land. So there is ways that I guess it can be then beneficial, on whoever you can fleece for the money for your parking.
If you want to fleece tourists, surely you need parking. You need parking charges, don't you? If you
so in Bali, when we were there the other week, there were a lot of people coming from outside, and it was £3. And some people, they were from York, Skipton way, they were like, it's a bargain, it's £3. But then some people, it was actually, if they had a family and they were going to then buy an ice cream or something, £3, that was an incentive. So it's really about like, I think there's a good spot for it. I mean, Bali, it's probably quite different to Barlick, because obviously it's very specific, because it's so busy now. But I do think towns in terms of
Bali to fleece the tourists.
Well, there was an issue that people liked the toilets being there, yet there was a sign up saying we need money to keep these toilets going. It costs us £7,500 a year. It's paid for by the local town council, and then a lot of the tourists were saying they would be willing to pay £3.50 or £4 for the parking if the extra pound was going towards the toilets. If it just said in a sign, this is what it's going towards.
Yeah, the money's actually going
It's different
towards,
from Barlick, obviously. But
so actually it's also about communicating where the money's going.
It seemed a little underpriced when people were saying the lakes is £10 to park and then 50p for the toilets. It seemed, because there's that many people coming in using the resource of the village, and then not getting, it would easily self-fund those toilets, like with the amount of people coming in.
That parking's only recently come in. They're paying for parking in Barley, so it's a quite recent thing.
What do you think about it? Is it something that you would like to see, or
I think there's taking another point here. There's degrees. You want to attract tourists. Barley's a given. People will go to Barley no matter what.
But is it
because of its location? It's Pendle Hill. It's beautiful walking country. And for £3-4 parking, it's a gift, is that? But to apply that to, like, say, Barnoldswick, I think Pendle in general, does Pendle in general not charge parking?
The worry is less about that it's
parking charges in Nelson.
I couldn't tell you if there is a charge parking thing, but the worry is, of course, that with funding being squeezed, there's going to be a point at which where councils aren't going to be able to keep the upkeep on the car parks. So it's going to pass it down and down and down, just like lots of other things have had to do to keep them going. And that means then that everybody in, say, Barnoldswick would be paying for the upkeep of the car parks, but wouldn't necessarily use it themselves. They'd use it, and they see that then as a personal investment per person for a visitor to come in. So they're getting the benefit, but you're getting the cost to it, and you're not, while there is a kind of like, obviously a trickle through of the money that goes to local businesses and makes the town better, you're not going to see that directly. All you're going to see is there's an extra couple of quid a year on your precept, on your council tax bill. So the idea is that if we could try and keep it so that they are free, we aren't actually considering charging. That's what we want to have. We want to have that thing where we want these people to come, we want to be able to park for free, and we want that kind of like, almost like a promise, or at least something to say, we're not considering this isn't off the table for now, that kind of thing. That was more my point, really.
Okay.
Just on that, there's quite a lot of disc parking, certainly in Nelson. I don't know about other parts. So you've got some long stay car parks, and then they tend to fill up really quick because if you've got people working and need to park all day, and then you've got like disc parking for like 2.5 hours, and you have to display a disc as to what time you've arrived. And they are well kind of monitored in terms of, you will get a ticket if you run over and stuff. So there is a car park review which is happening, not something I'm involved in, but to look at car parks and to look at usage and what they're used for, and I don't know whether it'll look at fees and charges and things as well. So yeah.
I mean, are you under pressure to kind of discourage people from using cars and to use alternative means of transport?
It's definitely a key agenda. In terms of climate change and looking at the council's corporate priorities at the moment, climate change features in 2 of those, and it's certainly something we're looking at in terms of electric charging points and as a council what we can do, sort of pool cars and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely part of that. Absolutely.
Okay, so there's also the thing about carpooling. Maybe that could help some of the help some of the transport issues here in Barnard.
I think if you start charging for parking on the car parks here, then visitors will just start parking on the streets, and we've already got major issues with car parking in Barnoldswick. Even on the double yellow lines on Church Street, the parking on there. So if you start charging, then they're just going to find the back streets, and it's just going to become even more congested for the local people, unfortunately. So I used to do car parking prosecutions at Craven District Council, and
I bet you're popular.
Oh, I was very popular. But car parking charges was the second biggest income earner for Craven District Council. So that's Skipton. I don't know if it'd be the same in Barnoldswick, but I'm all for keeping them free. Let them come and use them rather than coming up, blocking up all the streets in Barnoldswick.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I don't know. I don't feel we've kind of settled on that. It's obviously we see both sides of this argument. I mean, where do we want to go? Paul, have you got any thoughts about this? The Barlick version of this house is looking. I mean, mostly it's around the house rather than in the house, but it's looking quite sort of industrial. It's looking quite sort of busy. But is there anything we're missing out on? Do you,
I would be...
Yeah.
Sorry, Paul.
Yeah.
Just when we were out and about, someone, I don't know, this is just someone's opinion from, she was an ex-Nelson and College teacher. She said that West Craven had gone downhill. Someone earlier said the schools were good. She said she was finding her grandson was having a lot, like, it wasn't as good as she said it was for her daughter who was, my age, 40. So I don't know. It's just putting it because we're here and what you guys might have heard.
That's the high school, I think, rather than the primary schools. I think they're in Barnoldswick. They're all very good, but I've heard that the West Craven High School has gone down a bit.
There are 2 years specifically that are causing problems, and both those are the years that were affected by COVID.
Right, so this is also a hangover from COVID.
And having said that, going back to my son was at school with Alex, Steve's son, and his phone teacher then said that it comes in fits and starts. They get an exceptionally good year, and that'll be followed by a not so good year. Yeah. And obviously if that's like 2 not so good years on the bounce, that does reflect on the school. So I think there's an element, it's not, obviously some of it is down to the school itself, but the last 3 years have been extremely difficult.
I mean, maybe that's something we could look at, is that what's been the impact of COVID in this area? Do people feel recovered from, maybe not from the illness itself, but from the impact of that? And is there stuff that still needs to be done? Is that, I mean, one of the interesting things I think we hear a lot about in Nelson is that COVID also had a positive side of actually people coming together in the pandemic, maybe in a way that people do in Barlick anyway. But I don't know, has anyone got anything to say about that?
Yeah, I think when we had lockdown and I think the response was really good. I think across the borough was very good as well. There was a fund set up for families who in need who couldn't get out or couldn't earn or whatever, a reason to get some food. And as far as I'm aware, only one family in Barnoldswick asked for it. I think everybody else could just help each other regardless of this money that was available. So I think the setup was there. I think it was very well catered for people who needed it. I think that I think possibly, if anything else, I think people knowing more about it might have had more uptake, but it was there and it was set up very quickly, and it was really effective for the people that had it.
So was it a similar experience that people really did help each other out? And is that something that is kind of recognised and celebrated, or is it just people just got on with it and now we're moved on?
Oh, I'm not sure I can really answer that one. I think a lot of places locally all try to help together. There's a couple of food banks who help out as well. They're very active in the area, and obviously needing those is not necessarily a great thing. But the fact that it was there as support for people who needed it was good. But I mean, that's not really a council thing at all, is it? Really?
Yeah. But I guess it's about the community, and the community seems to be pretty strong here.
I'd say yes. I mean, I can't say that anecdotally. I've seen it applied to this particular topic. I couldn't say that that's necessarily saying that and agree with that. In general, it appears to be. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so then that's like good results for COVID. I think we can move on from that, unless anyone else wants to say anything about COVID, the pandemic. We all want to move on probably from that. Maybe I feel like we're coming into the last leg of this, and maybe obviously we've got these T-shirts around. Maybe you want to say a little bit about that and what's going on with those. But also looking at this house, as I said, we've focused mostly on the outside, on the environment around the house. That's probably because we didn't really entertain that house metaphor enough tonight, but every gig is a different gig. But Andy, tell us about the T-shirts in the meantime.
Well, I was going to ask quickly, I've got a question how people find out about stuff, because you're just saying that it's sometimes hard for people to find out about things. Yeah. And that's come up a lot out and about, that there is stuff happening, even like tonight, like we can really push it, but then, and it's that during COVID, loads of people talked about stuff, and obviously the word got out there. I just wonder how you can do more of that. And I know that in Nelson, the Asian community, a lot of it's the local radio station, but I don't know how that works across the rest of the different towns.
I mean, is that an issue? I mean, we've been plugging this event. I'm very appreciative of those people that came. Could more people have come? Are there channels, or are there just not channels to get the word out there? You mentioned this money that was available for families in the pandemic. How hard is it to actually communicate these things are out there? Or is it just that people don't need these things?
The community spirit's there and all the get up and go is there, but then how do you kind of communicate that and get that momentum?
I'm not entirely in agreement with that. There is a minority of people who will be engaged and always look for opportunities to be engaged. And sadly, they're not representative of the community of Barnoldswick or indeed anywhere else. They're mostly old guys like me, actually, white, certainly. So I think there's a positive and a negative to this, that there is a goodwill and a positivity about Barnoldswick, but I think it's just a little, just for me, occasionally a little inward looking and not as inclusive as it could be. We've got some fantastic examples, you know, and I'm surprised there aren't people here from St Andrews, for example, because we work very hard as a community to integrate the residents who are multi-disabilities at St Andrews, active in all sorts of walks of life. So there are some examples of engagement like that, but I'm not entirely as comfortable with that personality of the town as I'd like to be.
So you think a bit more diversity,
yes,
out to different...
You guys know how to do it. It's your job. So getting more people to an event like this isn't what we've turned up. You guys know how to go about getting young people and people from different minorities around, etc., etc. We don't. I've got a point on the house though, because we talk often about housing. I'm sort of an advocate of wanting more housing in town, and plenty of people aren't. They want to pull the drawbridge up and say that's enough. What I am personally disappointed about is the quality of housing that happens in Barnoldswick is awful. It's standard, easy to design, useless, boring stuff that's probably cheap, and the builders get away with it, and with respect to the council, the planners let it happen. If we want to be smarter about building in green considerations with the housing, then the council could start to demand better quality design, not necessarily more expensive, just better quality design for those houses. The ones that have...
Can you give us an example for those that are...
Just heat pumps and stuff, solar panels, much better efficiency, not necessarily Marshallite stone effect fronts, which is what seems to be built everywhere in town. They're awful and they're boring, and no reason why anybody would want to come to town to look at one of those houses. But you know, they might if we decided we could get for ourselves a unique opportunity to be a centre of excellence for quality eco-design of housing.
That's a strong point. That is
something worth looking at. And my wife might even agree with that then, about more houses in town.
Right, okay. I feel like we're going into that kind of final thoughts kind of zone here, but that is a strong... It's not necessarily a final point, Steve, but I think it's a strong point towards the end of this. You know, this house, we went for generic, to be honest, because it's just a metaphor. But is it well designed enough? Is it, you know, a sustainable eco house? Has it got a heat pump? Has it got a nuclear reactor in the basement? These are all questions. So yeah, maybe it's time just to get some final thoughts on this. Let's look at that. I still also want to talk about these maybe just want to say a little bit about the t-shirts. I mean, when I came to ask you about the t-shirts, you made a very, very strong point about connectivity. But do you want us to say what's going on with these t-shirts?
So we went out and about. We were in Colne, Briarfield, Barlick, Barley. We worked with some young people in Nelson and in Briarfield. And these are just a small selection. We're just asking them to decorate them about what they were thinking about Pendle, different things. You can't read a lot of the detail on the Colne one, but it was just saying like a lot of pride came up a lot, like trying to have more pride in the area. A lot of the young people transport issues did come up quite a lot in terms of feeling trapped and not feeling like, you know, that they as much connected. Youth clubs was a really big thing. Bullying came up a lot actually, so there definitely seems to be issues at schools for young people. So that's what came up. Policing came up so much, like from all the generations, I must say.
Is it people wanting
visible, just old school policing came up massively in Barlick, because we also had a big slate board. I think jobs, of course, people want jobs. So a lot more younger people, like teenagers, were interested in staying in Pendle. Whether that will last, then some were just obviously, if they're into arts and stuff, they wanted to leave. But they might come back because they want to go out and get some experience. But some were thinking of staying. But then I think they weren't quite sure what they were going to do or what the routes for them were in terms of jobs and that kind of thing. So
that's some really interesting feedback. That's some really good food for thought on that. I don't know if that's going to give people, feed into their final thoughts.
I mean, just visually, these t-shirts, shirts remind me of something that I think Norwegians do on like the Norway Day. But they don't do t-shirts. They do like just trousers. I think they're part of like the uniform, school uniform or something. So when you graduate or when you come to the end of your school year or something like this, that's kind of combined with the Norway Day somehow. I can't remember what it is, but people kind of write different messages, kind of like when you break your arm or something, people write different messages. But what I think is so brilliant about it, that everybody does it across different schools and stuff. So and I wonder whether it could be like a I don't know, like a youth day or something
where
everybody
to wear their shirts.
Yeah, just wear the shirts and like leave. I don't know, just do something that brings all these different youth clubs together. I mean, this has just made me think.
They wanted to wear the T-shirt with the town's name on it because they were clearly proud of where they lived. Which is like people wanted
so
there is
pride, and there's pride amongst the young
yeah.
people as well, which is great to hear.
Can I just ask about the policing? Did people want to see more uniforms on the streets or
mostly
less?
I think it was just cuts really, and not seeing as many, and people not having those chats, people not knowing who each other are. Exactly.
We used to have the local police man in the town, and we knew who he was, we knew his name, everybody knew him, and so you would see him out and about, and if you if you had a question, you could go and ask him. I wouldn't know if we have a local policeman anymore. I don't think we have.
As far as I remember, we've got two, and they cover the whole of West Craven.
Okay, so they're
they're obviously they're here, but they're I think Trawden as well as it covered, and possibly in that one. So that spread too thin.
Okay, so that is still an issue. And let's get some I think if we can get some final thoughts. Obviously, we talked about a lot, and I can just recap that. What did we start off? We started off talking about where was it? The nest. We talked about people going and coming back. We talked about the love thing. That's just a thing that you go out and you get your partner from somewhere else in the world, bring them back here, hook them on and then they are, as you say, trapped here. We started off talking about that, and we talked about what we would bring. There's a lot of culture offers, but we talked about jobs, we talked about the economy, whether anything can be done about these kind of global forces of the economy, but the answer was yes. And then we talked about kind of like oven-ready plans and having the plans ready. Then what we talked about after that, we talked about transport a lot. We talked about links, not just transport links, but also communication links. I think is very big, and I think it's something. Possibly we've got the answers to how to get these people, how to contact all these different diverse groups. I don't think we have. That's why we're asking the question, and we'll ask everyone all the time. And in a way, I don't know if I'm going to say a final thought. I'd say probably my thing is you just need to go out there and just keep going and talking and communicating in all the different social medias, every single platform and media you can think of, and just actually there's no shortcut to it. It's just a lot of hard work that no one really appreciates that you do. Anyway, and then we talked a little bit about young people. What's that?
Industrial landscape and
fleecing the tourists, car parking. So these are all things we talked about. I don't know. You can have a final thought about that or about something completely different. It's up to you. Let's get some final thoughts. Final thought when we start. Paul, your final thought.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of learned much more about Barnoldswick, even though I live in Earby. I'm kind of Colne, Barrowford sort of end, and work a lot in Nelson and Brayfield. And I think there is so much we can learn from these towns that we can pass on. And for me, I think I've always had this thing that Pendle doesn't really exist in people's heads. Everyone is just the town that they live in or they work in.
Yeah.
And I think that thing of sharing that knowledge across would be really good. And I'd love to find this thing of like getting things ready, some sort of system where these conversations keep happening and these ideas bubble up for when we are ready, really. And also, I just think I often wonder is like the energy that it takes to I guess to sort of demand more for the places that we live, because I think for me housing is like a real issue. You know, if you see a development happening in Skipton, it's a different quality of housing that you start to see in places like that. Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, architecturally, whatever. And it's always frustratingly, it's always still driven down to cost and profit, and that's the frustrating thing is that we still operate in this model that even if it might be funded and is like a public-private development of it, it's always the profit bit that's driving the agenda, and it's knowing where in certain places we'll be able to get more profit, and it's a shame that places like this and Nelson Bray Field, where it's kind of, you know, it's driven in that way, rather than just trying to have the best for the people that want to live here or want to work here.
And I think that's a really good point, and we should be aiming for the best, and there's no reason why we can't up the standard there. You know, there's many things in Pendle which are top standards, so why not housing? Let's get some final thoughts. Steve, a final thought?
Well, it's the same theme. There have always been unique elements of Barnoldswick. There always have been, to live and to work, to play, to learn. All those things have at various times been unique. And I think it's for us and whoever is pulling together this sort of work, probably the public sector, to understand that we have to relentlessly keep finding unique elements that are worth backing in Barnoldswick that make us as good, if not better, than the competitors.
And what do you think? What is that one thing that's unique about or great about Barnoldswick?
Well, I'm very biased. I would say jobs. I would say people. I work all over the country. People say it must be lovely in Barnoldswick. Well, it's an industrial town. I don't want it to be lovely. I don't want it to be leafy. Oh, are you near the Dales? No. I'm in East Lancashire. It's an industrial town. We've got factories. And I think that USP makes it different than many other areas and worth fighting for.
Okay. Well, I'm going to...
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think for my final thoughts on those things, it's that challenge of recognising the diversity of Pendle and the different towns and villages and the different heritage and the strengths that each area brings, whilst also wanting to sort of celebrate Pendle as a borough as well. And I think that is a real challenge because, you know, it is different in different parts of Pendle, and I think it's about celebrating that uniqueness in each area. So yeah, which I think we've done here for Barnoldswick, which is great.
Yeah. Well, we've got a pretty industrial Barnoldswick house compared to the last one, but which is funny. You wouldn't think it, you know. Rebecca, final thought?
The alarm's fixed.
Just when we finish,
No, it's for now. I think it's this that's tripped it all.
Really? Okay, blaming us. Okay, fair enough. James, final thought?
I'd say the Pendle district is a bit more individual and creative than the rest. This part of the North of England is a bit more, has more culture than the rest of the country, because I grew up in the south of England, and there's nothing in the home counties like this. There should be something like an art collective in each county or something.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we could...
make it collective arts council.
I mean,
thingy.
it is a very inventive area, and it's historically been inventive, but are we doing enough to actually kind of keep that going or actually foster that in Barnoldswick?
I ran out of Barnoldswick in 1980 because I found it one of the most boring places to be when I was an 18, 19-year-old and went to Skipton. Don't know why. But then I came back, married, had my children here. My father, who was originally from Paisley, Glasgow, moved down here, or was sent down here when he was 15, and he's 87, he's still living here. So there's 4 generations of us here. We've all got our plots booked down at Gill Church. So I think we'll be staying here for some time to come. It's just one of those places, is Barlick, we love it.
Okay, all right, so we have a round of applause for that.
I came from Burnley originally. Roger brought me in to Barnoldswick, and our daughter moved out of, lived in Leamington Spa for a long time, came back, brought her partner from Beedale. He lived in Beedale, so we tend to, or Barnoldswick people tend to go out and bring new blood in. I think that helps as well. It has a different feel to the place because it does bring new people in from different areas.
So it's important to get the fresh blood in there.
Yes, yeah, I think so.
But you always come back to Barnoldswick. That seems to be the theme here. Whatever's going on.
I think Pendle and specifically Barnoldswick has a uniqueness that's to be celebrated. And picking up on Steve's point about the industrial heritage, certainly. But unlike Steve, I do love the Dales. I love the Forest of Bowland, and they've got the Pennines. And within 40 minutes in 3 directions, you can be in either one of those. The beauty of Barnoldswick is it's not on a through road. If you're coming into Barnoldswick, you either live, work, or visiting.
So in a way, some of the things we've been talking about, which, I mean, it's about, in a way, that sweet spot as well between getting the communications and the transport in, but not making it into... I mean, do you want to see a motorway come through it? Or a train?
No, there's definite room for improvement on the infrastructure, not just the bus and the talk about the trains, but the roads in general. The quality of the roads is a lot to be desired. But picking up on the point that was made earlier on about the community spirit, I think it has a very, very strong community spirit. I think some of the events that we've put on, I was stood in the town square, the band's on the square, talking to people that come from all over the area and saying what a beautiful place Barnoldswick was. Talking to a guy, he said, where have you come from? I said, I come from Skipton. All right, so what's brought you? So I've actually moved in to Barnoldswick, primarily because the prices of houses is significantly different. But picking up on the point about what you're saying about the quality of houses in Skipton, the quality of houses in Skipton is significantly higher, but also is the price of the houses significantly higher. And that's got to be an attraction, the fact that people can move into the Pendle area and afford to live in Pendle area.
So it's cheap, I mean, that's the thing, cheap and cheerful, cheap and cheerful. Cheaper. Affordable.
Wide range.
Okay, right.
Something for everyone.
I think that any kind of investment that's going to bring people together is going to be the thing that helps Pendle as a whole. I think anything, and you can take that as being infrastructure in terms of roads and trains and all that kind of thing. You can also talk about communication and what's going on across the borough. I think we're very easy to just look at what's going on in Barnoldswick, and obviously we've got an investment in our own town. But if we're talking as Pendle as a whole, then we need to know what's going on there as well, and how what they're doing can help us and what we can do to help them. Maybe even sharing ideas of what works well here or what works well in other towns, and see how we can share that information.
I mean, we're definitely going to, when we're going to Colne, we're going to Nelson, we're going to Briarfield, and we're going to be taking, not just this, but this is just a way of, then we'll explain the conversation. But, I do feel that interchange between the different areas of Pendle, could be more. And it's the ideas, the imagination, and the personalities as well, that I think could be exchanged a bit more as well.
That's it. I think we need the information back at the end of it, though. I think actually it's all very well us giving our opinion, and again, we kind of like we're all together on this because we want Barnoldswick to be good. But hearing what other people are doing as well, that's going to help. And hearing that maybe even that somebody's taken on something what we've said here tonight and has gone, oh, that's actually a good idea, and us hearing that back as well to say that that's come from us. So that makes us feel better about it as well.
They're going to be making nuclear reactors in Nelson next instead.
I'd like to see some kind of, I don't know, like a festival, like a Pendle festival, where maybe, there's a different, hub for every summer or something when it happens. Because it sounds like there's already stuff happening. There are events on the square and
some
stuff.
Some kind of rotating festival.
And people obviously feel a draw towards what's happening here. I wonder whether it's possible to kind of spread it out. I know that in Belgium they've got this festival which they pick 3 Flemish cities, but the festival just rotates between these 3 cities every year, and I wonder whether that's something that can happen across the entire borough, just to kind of pick up people as you go.
Would it actually sort of get more rotation, more...
and have some nice mix of, some local artists, but also artists from outside, just to kind of maybe reflect where people have come from, different areas of the UK, but maybe also the world. And the final thing is that I'm really inspired by the community spirit, just because my mum was complaining about her neighbours and how the world has, the situation, basically how there's no community spirit, but I feel like there's loads of it here. That's in Białystok in northeast Poland.
Okay, so...
But yeah, so I think it's possible.
Yeah, you're lucky to have the community spirit here. Final thought?
Final thought already?
No, you haven't.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you want me to just go back on everyone else's final thought? We talked a lot about the identity, the pride, we talked about the community, we talked about this sense of interchange, housing, can it be better, can it be affordable and better? So there's that question, there's, you know, do we want Barnoldswick to have motorways and high-speed trains coming through, or do we want it to be...
I feel like I should do a shout out for Earby, because you know it's only down the road, and I think the two towns kind of are very close, right? Working together.
And
so
too small
I think in terms of the sharing, between Pendle, maybe it starts locally, because then you can have different, like you're saying, like if there's an event on in the town square, like a Barlick Beach, maybe there's an Earby something as well, so that you get this kind of cross-fertilisation of the economies and stuff, and people start going, oh yeah, we like, you know, which there already is, I think, loads, isn't there? But just a bit more of that, but also across the wider area, so like, there's the, you know, Nelson Food Festival will be different from the Colne Food Festival, but maybe do people know about all these food festivals that are happening? And if there is like a month where it's the Pendle Food Festival, and you know that every Saturday there's these different. So I think this integration,
could it be a kind of almost like a giant virtual Lazy Susan that shifts the food around? But
maybe that is something for the council in terms of because you're saying about the uniqueness, but it's just like pulling. That's in a way it's the borough that pulls it all together, isn't it? And can kind of maybe package that up a bit more, or so that people can find out about all those different things.
Okay, food for thought, I think, at the end there. I think we're going to leave it there. A sort of a round of applause for everybody. And obviously, you want to hear what's going on in the discussion, you're very welcome to come to see what people think of this image and the one we've done before of the... So we have got more events. Paul knows when and where they are, and you're all welcome to come to see what other people in Pendle think. So
we're in Nelson tomorrow at Unity Wellbeing Centre, 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Hopefully Colne on Wednesday at the Town Hall.
Yeah.
And then we're going to be out and out in between as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so you can join us there. Thanks very much for everyone taking part. This is all going to get fed in, digested. It's part of a much bigger project to actually understand what's going on in Pendle and try and devise some new strategies, and thanks everyone.
And big up Rick for all the visualizations, working tirelessly down in London.
Thank you, Rick. You can even say something if you want to. You're just going to stay silent and you're going to bow out. It's up to you. No, there we go. Yeah, silent message. Yeah, some pixelations going on. He's talking with his pixels. Okay, maybe you can just throw in the Lazy Susan at the end there, just in the kitchen, with different culinary bits in there. And then we'll leave it there. Thanks very much. Let's hit the theme music.